Good morning, folks. It's good to see y'all. It's about 25 after in the morning on Thursday morning. Now, I've been out here looking. I don't know if you all noticed behind me, there's a pole light that the electric company provides up on that electric pole, and it's phasing in and out. It's just barely lit right now, and I thought they had it fixed, but they did not replace that light, so I'm going to have to make a phone call today. Yeah, I'm looking a little rough. I was mowing yesterday, and there it's dusty, dust everywhere, and so I need to take a shower after a while. But I wanted to come out and enjoy the morning. It's chilly this morning. It feels good. Uh, School started in a lot of places, but fall's not here yet. It's got another month before fall, and so even though days are shorter and nights are longer, it's still summertime. Now it's going to get up real nice, and I think about 78, 79 degrees, which is good weather. This night has been good sleeping weather. But I'm up this morning. I was looking around, came out to enjoy the morning. I'm going to have me a cup of coffee in just a little bit. But I wanted to do another real short story or thought on my series that I've been doing, Appalachia Before Dawn, where I get up and I ponder, talk about history just a little bit. This time I want to talk about my family's history and some of your family too, and some of y'all had histories just like this. Because you see, in 1845, John Holland, Holland, my great-great-grandfather, and his wife, Margaret Bowling Holland, came across with 8 young'uns. That's a lot of kids. Some of those were from John's first marriage. His wife died in 1833. We think her name was either Lucinda or Melinda, but we aren't sure. There's no record. The interesting thing is, in 1833, he has a daughter named Cynthia by that first wife. And then in 1833, he married Margaret. And he was 35 years old, and she was 16 years old. She was a neighbor. They lived in the farms right beside each other, but the world was different back then, and 16 was considered a full-grown woman. In many, many ways, the world's different, and that's one of the ways. But in 1845, they decided to cross the Cumberland Gap and go into Clay County to settle. And my family lived there. That's where I went to high school, and where my daddy was born, and where so many of my family lived, and some still live. But I think about that, and I think about how early settlers in Kentucky, and eastern Kentucky especially, how and why they came across. And that's your family too. In one way or another, your family did those same things. And in talking with folks and researching and looking at maps, my family, the Hollands, lived in what was Hawkins County, what is now Hancock County, Tennessee. And it's near Sneedville. And it was where the Duck Creek went into the Clinch River. And I've been there. I've walked that property, got permission, and I walked that property. And I look at that, and it was good land right on the river. And I wonder why they went across. And I think one of the reasons they probably went across the Cumberland Gap is because John Gilbert Sr., his sons, his grandsons, and then Felix Gilbert, my great-great-great-grandfather, they came back and forth across the Cumberland Gap. John Sr., Gilbert Sr., that is, he came across, and he was selling salt. And he would come across with mules, just dozens of mules sometimes, with loads of salt. He had a salt work where he had a well, and he pulled up salty water and boiled it down and made just some fine, wonderful salt. And he'd come across the gap and he'd sell it. It's about 100 miles from where John Holland Jr. and his wife Margaret lived with 8 children. 8 of those children came across with them. The youngest was less than a year old. My great-grandfather was not even 2 years old. Yeah, they were busy. Some of those children, I think 4 of those children, maybe 5, I'm not exactly sure on some of those this early in the morning, were from his first wife, who was named either Lucinda or Melinda. We're not sure of that. And they were teenagers, some of them. So they came across together sometime early 1845. But was that the first time that John Holland Jr. came across? No, I think that Felix and John Gilbert came across and sold land that they had surveyed to folks over in Hawkins County, Tennessee, is what happened. And I think, being relatives, because John Gilbert and John Holland Jr. were brothers-in-law, because Margaret Bowling had a sister that married John Gilbert. So I suspect that he said, there's some good land over there. It's available. I'll take you over there and I'll settle you on it. And I think it's up on an area that they call Plank, Kentucky, up on Martin's Creek, if you know where that is in Clay County. And they went. 100-mile trip, I suspect the way that they went was from Hawkins County, from Sneedville area. They went up and went up above the gap to Martin's Fort, Martin's Station. And then that short trip down from Martin Station down to the gap across, and then up into Clay County on the other side eventually, where they settled, as I said, on Martin's Creek. But I don't think that when they traveled all together with the youngins and everything, I don't think that was the first time that John Holland Jr. was there. I think he went with some of his cousins earlier. I think the fall before, after harvest was done, I think he went and he spent time over there. And I think a lot of our ancestors, a lot of those early settlers in eastern Kentucky did that. They'd go over, they'd stake their claims. They would go with somebody that was a surveyor, like John Gilbert and Felix Gilbert, both surveyors, or their children, or even their grandchildren by that time. And I think they went over and they staked their claims and they prepared the land some in the fall. This time of year, harvest is almost over for a lot of folks. Folks are canning beans and canning kraut and canning corn and tomatoes, or one way or another. They're waiting until it's a little bit cooler when there's a frost, and it's going to be hog killing time. You don't want to kill hogs this time of year, and dress them out and put them in the smokehouse, make sausage or anything, because it won't do good. The flies will blow it and leave maggots in it. You don't want to do that. Here's an interesting thing that I did not know. When they smoke and cure a country ham or bacon, or even the shoulders, when they do that to put it in the smokehouse, what they do is they rub it with salt, and they have a board that they would put on. They rub it with salt, and a lot of folks put some sugar in with that. These days they put nitrates in there also, but probably didn't do that at all back then. They rub it with salt and they leave it lay, and they turn it over and every now and then keep it covered with salt. And what the salt does is it dries out all the moisture and dries that ham, which becomes a country ham eventually. Now, prosciutto, if you've had that, it's the same thing. It's dried out ham, basically. Now, when they do that, a lot of times they would wrap it in cheesecloth and they'd hang it up in the smokehouse and they would smoke it for a while. But that's not necessary. That's not necessary. That would be done a little bit later on, and I suspect that Margaret and her daddy, Levi Bowling, who later came over with John and Margaret to Clay County, and some of his children helped her later on in the fall do the hog killing. But I think John went over, and I think some of your ancestors did too, went over early, and at least took a horse, mule, I think more likely a mule, or even an ox over there, to pull logs, cut down logs, and build a small cabin to start with a wife and 8 children. He needed more than an itty-bitty 8x8 cabin. I suspect that John Holland and other folks like him built lean-tos to start. They probably had canvas. If he had a wagon or a sled that he pulled with, and I suspect it was either an ox or a mule. They're hardier, they can pull better than a horse, and they're cheaper. He went over there. I think he cleared land, and he prepared the place that he was going to bring his family. And I think he worked at it up into the wintertime. He stayed there. Might have built a stone fireplace on that little cabin, and once that was done, he could go back. Maybe some of his relatives, maybe a nephew, maybe a cousin, maybe a brother went across with him to help him prepare that land. And I think that's what a lot of those early settlers did. They'd go across, they'd prepare, and then they'd go home and bring the family back. So let's just suppose that John did that. When did he do it? I think because of winter weather. I think John Holland Sr., as early as I said, John Holland Jr., he probably went across after the winter was over with, because up in the mountains, Cumberland Gap and other places like that could just be covered in snow. Impassable? Maybe, maybe not, because the weather in the Appalachians are not like it is way up north sometimes. So it could be clear passage much of the year. I'm not real sure. I've never been up there in the wintertime. I need to do that one of these days and see what it's like in January, for example. But I think early in the year, January, February, he went home, made final preparations, sold what he could sell, bought what he needed to buy. He knew he could buy salt over there because his brother-in-law, Felix, John Gilbert, and and John's brother, Felix, they were up there, and John had salt. He was a brother-in-law. John and John. I know it's confusing. It is early in the morning. But I think when he could get back over, maybe January, February, he took the family back. He had made preparations, and he took the family back, and they settled in, and they started working on the land so that when spring started to appear, they could go out and they could start plowing, they could start digging, and they could get ready for spring and for spring planting. And if they took animals, if they took a couple ox and had a yoke of oxen, or if they took a mule or two, when they went in March, things are starting to grow, and there'd be plenty for their work animals to eat. And there'd still be some hunting. And they'd prepare for spring, for their first year in the mountains of Kentucky. Kind of interesting ponderings this early in the morning. Appalachia before dawn, isn't it? Listen, I'm going to post this later on today. I hope you listen to it. I hope you listen to all of it. And if you do, here's what I want you to do. I want you to subscribe if you would. If you don't want to subscribe, I understand, but hit the like button and say, I like this. That was a good video. Appalachia before dawn. Now, I had big plans, by the way. I was going to put a tent up down in the woods a little bit, have some acreage here, and I was going to put a tent up and camp and do some videos down in a spot where I am building a fire ring, and I thought, oh, that's going to be fun. And then a couple weeks ago, a bear appeared in the neighborhood, and he's still around. And so I'm being cautious, and I don't want to become a bear burrito in my sleeping bag, so I'm not going to do that this time. Apparently, from what I understand, across the road and up the hill, there's a cornfield, and he's living the life of Riley up there. The pictures and the videos we have of him say that he's a good-sized bear. Now, my neighbors across the road have a video of him just this last week. And if you go down past that light that keeps on coming off and on to the road and across the road, that's where their video camera is. They have a shed there just not too far from the road. And that's where the bear walked across, and from all appearances, he came from over here. I have a salt block out here, just kind of this way, for the deer. And last night I saw the deer walking across my drive time and time again, and I suspect the bear is over there inspecting where that salt block is. They don't lick the salt block. but they like to nose around and see what's going on. He's got corn. He's getting ready for the wintertime. And so are we. And so was John Holland Jr. and all the other folks like your family and my family that came across the Cumberland Gap. So with that, this is your old mountain doctor, Doc Holland, telling you I hope this Thursday morning, whenever you watch this, you have a good morning. And don't forget, hit the like button, the thing that goes like this. And you'll see where you can subscribe. Right on this, on the video, you should see a place where you can click on and subscribe. It helps me. I'm at about 45 subscribers right now. I want to get to 100 because when I get to 100, YouTube will give me my own little attachment. So when you click on a link, it'll have YouTube/Doc Holland or something like that, and make it easier to do this. And one of the I don't plan on getting no million subscribers, probably not even 1,000. I'd like to get 100. And one of the reasons is to allow people the chance to watch these videos. But like a lot of us, as we get older, we want to leave a legacy. So this is mine. Hope you'll be a part of it. Talk to you soon. God bless.